In this video, I'm going to ask you, what kind of wargamer are you anyway? So there are very many different types of people who might be watching this very video right here. There might be people who've stumbled on by accident via the whims of the YouTube algorithm. And to those of you, I say, hi, how's it going? But there's also probably some other more narrow groups that are coming here. There are either people who are thinking about becoming wargamers, or people who already are wargamers. And, you may say, oh, I'm just interested in the paint. That's fine. That's not a problem. You might say, well, I'm only interested in the tactics and the strats. I'm not really into the whole crafting thing. And that's also fine. But there are a lot of people out there who are in those different groups who maybe kind of have some trouble figuring out exactly which group they're in. And that's kind of an important thing to know. I'm a strong believer in the idea that self-awareness is key to being able to make yourself a better person or whatever, that kind of stuff. You got to work towards your strengths. That's really an important thing. And knowing your strengths and working towards them can help you in a lot of different ways. It can also help you in wargaming, though, as well. And when I say wargaming, I mean the whole gamut, from collecting to trying to win tournaments and everything in between. So the trick, though, is that it's important for you to understand which of that everywhere in between is the camp that you should be sitting in. And I'm not just saying the camp that you think you should be sitting in, but the camp that you should really be sitting in. That's the whole concept behind self-awareness. There are a lot of people out there, and again, this is maybe going back into a little bit of stuff that is of a broader scope than just wargaming, but there are a lot of people out there who love to tell you how you should live your life. Now, I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to help and say, hey, here's some things to think about, and then I'm going to have you go and do the homework and figure it out yourself. I'm not going to sit here and say, this is the way to paint models. I'm going to generally say, this is how I do it, and it might be something you might want to look at. I'm not going to be the type of person who says, this is how you win tournaments. Lord knows I shouldn't be preaching that, but there's a lot of people out there, marketers, advertising folks, people on social media, all kinds of things like that, who are telling basically anyone who will listen, this is the way that life is supposed to be because this is the way I'm doing it, and so therefore that's the way you're supposed to be doing it. And we get bombarded with it so much that it becomes sometimes that extra voice in our head that tells us, well, you're not playing your miniatures right. You're not painting properly. You're not collecting the proper thing. You're not being a good wargamer. So if you want to become a good wargamer, number one, there is no specific thing that makes anyone a good wargamer, unless it comes down to what it is that you want out of the hobby. So some people are hobby heroes. I kind of consider myself to be a hobby hero. I'm much more interested in the paints and the building and the overall craft. I like to play, don't get me wrong, but I don't necessarily put a ton of time into practice and getting better and getting all my strategery in a row and all that kind of stuff. I kind of basically sort of fumble through a lot of games, but I try to have a good time. That's the other part for me, is that I like to paint and do well, but I'm not trying to become a Golden Demon winner. I like to play and have fun, but I'm not trying to win any tournaments. And that's just the way that I work. That's just me. And you have to determine, and it takes some kind of self-thought, sort of, some being self-aware, what it is that you want out of the hobby. Because really, this is not a job for pretty much most of the people who are involved in it. This is a hobby. This is a thing we should enjoy. And if you are stressed and bummed out because you're just not good enough, you're not a good enough painter, but man, you sure do love to build. Well, that should tell you something, Maybe don't stress so much about the painting and just really build. Maybe you end up finding somebody who's maybe a person who doesn't like to build, but but they love to paint, and so maybe the two of you start to work together. You get this kind of symbiotic relationship. Whatever. Don't let what you think other people believe that a good wargamer is. Don't let that drive how you enjoy your hobby. If you love to go to tournaments, but you have literally no care in the world how you place, don't let people tell you that that's not a great way to spend your hobby free time. You know what I mean? Go to tournaments and meet people, hang out, whatever, look at cool armies, look at cool terrain, play games poorly, not poorly, sort of poorly, whatever you want to do. But if you're having the good time doing it and you're spending the time that you want to spend, you win. That's how that works. Whether or not you win the tournament, completely unimportant. If you go to a tournament because that's what you like doing and you just have a good time, whether you win, lose, or draw, you won. You won. That's all there is to it. So understand that all the stuff that you see out there that teaches you that this is the way to win tournaments and this is the proper way to build an army, you build the army the way that you enjoy and you play the type of game that you want to play, and that's the most important thing about the hobby when you're sitting down and looking at the competitive aspect of the tournament scene. There are people out there who love the fluff and the lore, and there are people out there who even like to try to create and tweak the fluff and the lore. They read what's out there and they decide to sit down and write their own stuff. And then almost always there's somebody who comes along and says, well, that's not the way it should be, or that's not the way it was, or that's not how it goes. If you are creative writing, if that's your jam, like you like to play the models maybe a bit and you paint a little bit here and there, but you're really interested in the books and you read all the books for, let's say, 40K, or maybe you read all the books that and all the cool fluff that comes out in any other game. Like most miniature games, for the most part, usually have some sort of fluff, and they get into that. Maybe you like to draw pictures. Maybe you want to, like I said, write short stories, whatever, about that stuff and the fluff, and that's your jam. Don't let anybody tell you that doesn't make you a good wargamer. Now, someone will be pedantic and say, well, technically gamer is part of the word wargamer, but yeah, you know what people who are pedantic can do. If you're not into skirmish, then don't play skirmishes. If you're not into building and painting huge armies and pushing all kinds of models around the table, don't do that. That's also a very important thing to understand. Just because maybe a ton of people in your area play a specific game, that doesn't mean that you have to. Understand you may have a bit of an uphill climb to get more games in, and you might have to convince some people to start playing, the game that you like or the style of game that you like. But don't let the overall common, what's out there in your local meta, for lack of a better term, dictate to you exactly how you have to play, or the games that you have to play, or the styles you have to play. This is an amazingly broad, very vast kind of small hobby, frankly, and it gives you lots and lots of different choices. So understand that if you're like, man, everybody around me is playing this game and I just don't know if I want to spend the time to paint all those models, or everybody's playing this game, which it's just these tiny little armies, and I just want to see a field of just spears and shields. You got to follow what it is that you want to do within the hobby, because it'll make you happier. Some folks love to just play one game. They are absolutely beholden to just one particular game. And then there are other folks like me who like to hop around a lot, and there's nothing wrong with either of those things. There's nothing wrong with just only wanting to focus on one game and only read the lore from that game and only build and paint models from that game and only play games of that game. And there's nothing wrong with playing a little bit of this, playing a little bit of that, hopping around, sort of forgetting the rules for this game because you haven't played it in about 6 months, and then coming back and playing this one. Just whichever way you want to go, understand what it is you want to do, and don't let people tell you, you should just focus on one thing. If you don't want to, don't do that. If someone says you should try something else, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. The trick is to understand, be self-aware, and see what type of gamer you are, and then make those changes, because it'll make you a happier gamer. The long and the short of it, frankly, is that other people will most likely be the ones to try to tell you whether you're being a good wargamer or a bad wargamer, or what type of games you should play, or what things you should stay away from, or you should try to paint better, or you should try to build, spend a little more time on conversions, or you should build quicker, or you should maybe slow down with the armies. All these different things. These all have a tendency to come from outside sources. And this is just a straight up fact of life, is that very frequently, other people, family, friends, in this situation, hobby, acquaintances, people who you play with at the local shop, whatever, they're all trying to kind of put their idea, very frequently, of what makes a good wargamer onto you, because They believe, well, I'm following these rules, everyone else should follow them as well. And people have a tendency not to understand, specifically in hobbies, that everybody kind of does it a different way and that there's nothing wrong with that. So sit down and maybe make a list. Sit down and say, these are the types of games I enjoy, or figure out and really think about it. When was the last time you had a lot of fun in a game? And then think about what really caused that. Was it the group of people? Was it the style of game? Was it the lore? Was it how lovely everything was painted on the table? Was it the conversions? Figure that stuff out and then start putting your effort into that. And don't put your effort into the things that you don't really care about. You'll be happier.
1, 2, 3, 4.